Great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's a great honor for me to be here at Oxford, not only to perform, but also to share some thoughts from my work with the seven-string ancient Greek lyre. Okay, so it's the same room.
Sorry. Okay.
Oh, so it's that one. Oh, yeah. So, when we look at an ancient lyre in a museum, the first image, we see an object. When we look at it in a vase painting, we can see a gesture. But when we hold it in our hands, we face a fascinating question. What musical world does this instrument open? What I would like to share today is not a theory, but a practice. How images, texts, and the hands of a musician can begin to speak to each other. My own journey with a lyre began almost by an accident. More than 10 years ago, I was invited to play reconstructed ancient instruments in an exhibition at Thessaloniki, my hometown in Greece. And among them, there was a lyre, a seven-string lyre, and I played it. I liked the sound, and I did not want to give it back again. I was not a philologist, I'm not till now, and I did not have a method. I only had the instrument in my hands, and at the beginning, I simply played. For several years, I explored the lyre's possibilities. I tried various techniques, borrowed ideas from other musicians, other instruments, pushed it toward contemporaneity, maybe also virtuosity. And I have to say that the sound, it was always beautiful. And the technical part, it was also impressive. But something inside me felt out of space, a feeling of a missing piece. So I realized that maybe I was asking the wrong question. Not what this instrument can do, but okay, the lyre can play whatever we want, whatever we imagine, but what unique sound world shaped by its strings. That is when I did a step back to images and texts. And for someone who is not a philologist, iconography is the most immediate form of evidence. It shows bodies, hands, angles, distances, things that a musician understands easily and fast. Again. Okay, I have it. Thanks to the musical iconography archive, Mitos, of Aristotle University in Thessaloniki, created by Alexandra Goulaki-Voutyra and her team, we now have thousands of catalog images of ancient musicians. It's an archive only with ancient instruments, musician, object fragments with a musical interest. And you can you can subscribe and have free access to this. So it was a treasure for me. And when you put Lyre, for example, at this archive, you have like 2,000 or 3,000 images all around the world. And when you look at them, something consistent appears. The right hand almost always holds a plectrum. Can you see the plectrum? Here, also here. The left hand almost always is on the strings. And very often the fingers of the left hand are straight and spread. So these are simple poses, or these are repeated gestures. And if they are gestures, images alone cannot tell us what they mean musically. So I needed a textual confirmation. Philostratus the Younger, in his description of Orpheus, gives us exactly what we already seen in the images before. So the right hand, in few words, the right hand holding the plectrum, the left hand finger straight on the strings, and the instrument balanced against the body. And this quotation, this passage was my first answer. I was probably holding the instrument in a plausible way. So I had the instrument and I tried to do the same. So left hand almost always on the strings. This is possible thanks to the telemon, because if I don't have the telemon, it's impossible to play with the left hand. So the very, very important tool is the telemon. I have my right hand, a plectrum, and this gives me freedom. The telemon gives me freedom, the plectrum gives me the possibility to produce sound. And with this ergonomic position, I can see that I can play seated easily. I can play standing, making movements. And it's a simple posture, no? But already tells us a lot about how the instrument wants to be played. So the next question became, what do the ancient sources say about the act of playing itself? The Greek musical vocabulary offers three fundamental terms: krousis, or the verb krouin, to strike; psalin, or psalmos, the verb psalin, to pluck; and a rare term, catalepsis, preserved above all in a scholion to Aristophanes, and later in the Suda lexicon, often understood as a way of taking hold of or stopping the string. Let's see. This is the passage of Aristophanes. He's talking about not music, but in the passage it contains the word krousin kai catalepsin. So what he said, our gift from fantasy and endless talk and striking and grasping. And where is the word catalepsin at the Scholia is explained better. And it said what catalepsis is what musicians called grasping the string after you hit it to control the sound, apotinosi ton phtongon. Also Suda gives us this term. And he said this in a musical sense. For musicians, called it a catalepsy when, after striking the strings with the plectrum or the fingers, they take hold of them in such a way that the note is sustained. So catalepsis is described as an action that follows striking or plucking the strings, whose effect, phtongon, the sound, apotinin phtongon, prolong the sound. And this information, apart Borthwick's article on that, exactly on that term catalepsis, has received very little attention in studies of playing the instrument. When attempting to understand it on the instrument, a practical problem arises. On a lyre, if I make vibrate the string and then touch it, I don't prolong the sound. I stopped it. Depending on the pressure also, the placement, maybe alter the pitch. So in other words, there is a clear tension between the textual description and what seems physically possible on the instrument. So some light, we have it with the verb apotinin. And we have Plato here that he compares it to struck bronze, like bronze that continues to ring unless someone takes hold of it. In this context, apotinin appears not to refer to artificially extending the sound, but to allowing it to exist and be perceived as continuous. If we apply this to the lyre, the sources suggest that catalepsis may involve managing or guiding the sound in some way. But how? If I suppress, for example, some strings and strike, I have a sustained sound in that way. So maybe suppress unwanted strings and letting only certain notes sound clearly can do that. Or if I produce sound and immediately stop the strings, I always shaped it. You can hear that I'm creating a sound after the striking, maybe. So shape the verdict sound, perhaps stabilizing or regulating vibration. In other words, the gesture may have involved striking multiple strings and selectively touching some with the left hand. The effect described in the text Phtongoνα potinin could correspond to this kind of control resonance. Ultimately, catalepsis remains for me a term that underlines controversy. I don't want to say that. I want maybe highlight the difference between what we read and what can we do, and invite us to pay attention on the term and see carefully the relationship between hand, instrument, sound, and explore it further. In this sense, the term may reflect a sound controlling gesture or a technique that we have not yet fully reconstructed. Maybe I'm wrong, I'm totally wrong with that. So if catalepsis names the act of holding or stopping the string, it already implies that another force must first set the string in motion. That force is expressed in Greek through the verb crewing. Terms such as crewing, crucis, crumacy are consistently associated with the action of the plectrum and with striking the strings. For example, here, in Homeric Hymn to Hermes, he plucked along the melody with a plectrum. Or Lucian here describes Orpheus always, whose plectrum keeps pace with his tongue, plectron homochroniti glote. Or Plato, again, explicitly here distinguishes plucking from striking with the plectrum. So, pselai ke crewin toi plectroi. So, both plucking and strumming. Or Pollux, that lists lyres as cruomena organa, cruomena, instruments that are plucked. And read in this way, crewing and catalepsis do not describe two separate techniques, maybe, but two complementary dimensions of the same musical process. One hand release sound, and the other holds. After crewing and catalepsis, we meet a third verb, psalo, psalin, and terms such psalmos, epipsalmos, epipsalomena. And this is where the things became interesting. Because unlike crewing, which clearly refers to striking the strings, with the plectrum, the crewing, plectrum is connected, psalin is less precise. It can mean to pluck, to play, generally, or to sing. So the question is psalin a specific technique, or is it a general word for playing? And we will see after that in many vases we have the left hand make an action to the string. So we can in some way have a visual example of psalin on the lyre. So we can see that Greeks did not speak about playing the lyre generally with one neutral verb. They spoke about different ways of touching the strings, striking, plucking, stopping, and sometimes combining them. A great semantic research is made by Eleonora Rocconi. She notes that verbs such as crewing, to strike, and psalin refer to specific ways of playing strings, but over time their use seems to have broadened. Also in reference to other instruments, such as the harps or the aulos, or even to the human voice. This shift does not appear random. It may indicate genuine changes in how instruments were actually played. I have it. Originally, psalin seems to mean plucking a string with the fingers, even a bowstring. here in Euripides. For harps, this meaning seems to remain consistent from 6th century BC onwards. We have the psalm connect the harps, and it's the technique of the harps. For the lyres, the situation appears more complex. And what I saw in the Rocconi's article is that these instruments might have been played in more than one way, as we see before. So strings could be struck with the plectrum, or strings could be plucked with the fingers. So she also confirms the different techniques. And going forward, yes, in some cases, both techniques may have been combined, like here, for example, in Herodotus, kitharizente kai psalin. So, two distinct practices, kitharizing, playing with a plectrum, and psalin, with the fingers. Kitharismos or psalmos, as Rocconi suggested also. What begins as flexible technique in earlier periods seems to crystallize into a more defined distinction, one approach from striking and the other for plucking them. Yes, tell them to play either with a plectrum and by plucking. Here is kitharismos, I mentioned before, and psalmos, playing with plectrum and finger plucking. At the same article of Rocconi also, we notice that the social context may reflect this flexibility. In symposia or small private gatherings, the verb psalin seems to be preferred. Plutarch, Pindar, and Anacreon associated with song accompaniment and female performers called psaltriae, and harp-style instruments as pectis, as we see here, or trigonos, epigonion, harp-style instrument with more strings and without plectrum. The way the meaning of psalin slowly expands over time from to pluck a string to play and finally to sing, because we still use the verb psalin in Greece at the Orthodox Rite. Psaltis is the singer of the rite of the Mass. In Christian, yes, in Orthodox Mass, makes more sense if the lyre was already played in several different ways. In other words, this can also be read as a trace of musical practice, not only as a change of words. So my next step is to look at the hands themselves. How might these different words have appeared in performance? Again, we have a very interesting article of Alexandra Goulaki-Voutyra. She studied also images and vase and she catalogued same gestures, similar gesture of lyrists or of guitarists, of all the family of the lyres, I mean. And these patterns do not appear random. They can be interpreted as kind of visual repertoire of gestures, showing how might have been performed. So Voutyra distinguishes gestures like this one. I will show you two of each category. She made a huge collection of the same gesture. So we have this category, the left hand fingers straight and extended on the strings, like so. And we can see also the plectrum just made a strumming. We can see it here, also here. Another category is the palm straight and thumb fold inward, like so. And usually the thumb is in the middle of the strings, between the licanos and mese, for some reason. And we can see it exactly here as well. And also we have, we don't see the plectrum here, but we have other with the plectrum in action with this gesture. Another one is the fingers bent and inactive, without any action of playing, no plucking, no psalling, no crewing, as here, so no action, playing action. And we have also this one, fingers pulling or pinching individual strings. And we can notice here that the right hand is making something else or offering or doing nothing. And the fingers are playing by themselves. I'm sorry. I'll go here. If you see my hand, I don't know, maybe it's playing something like that, but we can see that it's playing only with the left hand, not with the right hand. The other category is left hand plucking, right, and the right hand strikes with the plectrum. And it's different, the plucking of the left hand at that moment. It's not this one, but we have something like that. And the plectrum just made a strum, maybe. Something like that, if I'm trying to imitate the image. So a chord and another chord. Also, we have the plucking with the left and the plectrum with the right, but without the action of the striking of the chord. Maybe they are corroborating here, alternating sound, something like that. Hypothesis always. Oh, and we have this category, both hands active on the strings without a plectrum, which appears to be quite rare. Involves both hands active on the strings without a plectrum. It's a configuration it's in only about 2 or 3% maximum of the depictions. And I was wondering why we have 90% of the others and 2% of this. I found like 6, hardly 7 images without any plectrum with a lyre. And yes, we have also this one, for example, different, but without plectrum as well. Plutarch provides a telling example that helps explain why this technique may have been unusual. Sparta penalized the psaltis, a professional musician, for playing the kithara with his fingers. So the usual practice seems to have been psalming with the left, while the right hand held the plectrum. And this is also possible. We can see it also in the article of Rocconi, suggested that in more intimate gatherings, the full finger technique could have been used. Though, if I were a lyrist in Sparta, I will probably avoid it. And we have also this category, left hand's thumb and index pluck a single string. And we can see the difference between the first plucking, the second one, and this one. We can see clearly that that there is a connection between thumb and index here on both hands. I don't know if you can see the difference. You can see that we have thumb and index making something together. And if I put my hands on and try to make it, I create this sound on the same string. What is crucial is that, okay, again. Yes, is that these are not different instruments. They are the same lyre, played in different ways. Now we can see something important. The ancient verbs crewing and psalin are no longer floating terms. They correspond to visible gestures. Crewing, the right hand striking with the plectrum. Psalin, the left hand pulling or pinching the strings. And maybe catalepsis, the left hand stopping, holding, or controlling the vibration. The images show what the language allows. And this is where iconography and philology begin to agree. The lyre is an instrument in which the two hands do not mirror each other, but perform different kinds of musical work at the same time. Seen through Voutyra's visual categories, a famous passage of Quintilian suddenly became much more concrete for me. So, trying to explain how the human mind can attend to several actions at once, he writes of the sitar rods of a guitar player. With the right hand, they run across some strings, while with the left, they pull, restrain, or present others, while. For a long time, I had read this passage as a general metaphor of coordination, or better, alteration. So I thought the right hand across strings, while the left, they pull, restrain, or make something in alternation. Only later I begin to realize that it can be also a precise technical description. The right hand run across the strings, the action of the plectron of the crewing. The left hand pulls, stops, and offers, psalm and catalepsis in action. I think now what Quintilian described is not an alteration, but a simultaneity. Two different musical logics happening at the same time, on the same instrument. And yet, for many years, I did not truly hear this. I used striking and I used plucking, but mostly as separate techniques. I had the words and I had the images, but I did not yet have the physical experience that would make them coincide. That changed when I began working with an Aulos player. In order to play with the Aulos, the lyre could no longer behave like a solo instrument. It had to support, to respond, and interwave with another voice. Working with Callum Armstrong's compositions, I found myself forced. I came across the instrument into a new way of using my hands. The plectrum sustaining harmonic and rhythmic fields, while the left hand began to articulate melodic lines at the same time, striking and plucking together, in other words. This was not simply because the compositions were more complex. They are, but not only for that. But because, in my view, Callum, as a composer and Aulos player, shaped its piece with more holistic, three-dimensional vision, aiming for the blending of the instruments in a way I had not previously encountered. Only then did Quintilian's sentence become something I could physically felt in my hands. And experiencing these techniques in practice, it came to my mind also an important episode in modern research of ancient instruments. In the late 70s, some theoretical musicologists argued that the Greek lyre could not have sustained complex melodic textures. They claimed that any stopped or harmonic tones would have been intolerably thin, and that we simply cannot know what the instrument sounded like. And Helen Roberts responded with a radically different attitude. Instead of speculating, she wrote, technical theories must finally be subjected to a practical test. So she built the lyre, as Ben did, for example. And she played it. And her experiments produced results that speak differently to the ancient terminology. Directly to the ancient terminology we have been discussing. Each result is matching Athenaios' description of Lysander innovation in Philological, so virtuoso guitar playing. And Philological says that Lysander, Sicyonan guitarist, was the first to reform this style, extending the long tones and making the voice full-bodied. He introduced the enaulon guitarisin, and it was the first to play magadis and surigmon, a whistling sound. And Roberts had these experimental results. Putting longer and thicker gut strings on a 7-string lyre make her vibrate continuously for more than 8 seconds. And maybe this kind of sustain makes sense of Athenaios' description of enaulon guitarisin. So not as imitation of the sound of the aulos, or the timbre of the Aulos, but as a continuity of sound comparable to the Aulos. The other result is that by lightly touching the string at its midpoint, Robert produced clear natural harmonics. So from the free string to the magadizin, the octave, and to surigmon as higher whistling sound, maybe. And playing this while the right hand continues to strike the strings leads to what Athenaeus called ψιλοκυταριστικέ, solo virtuoso playing, where the right hand sustains rhythm and harmony, and left hand articulate a melodic line. So two simultaneous musical logic on a single 7-string instrument. Roberts didn't theorize, she built and tested, and her results match exactly what my hands discovered working with Callum's compositions. Something like maybe. I don't know, maybe. So, I would like to end with a brief personal reflection. I have been researching and playing the ancient Greek lyre for many years, exploring a wide range of technique and interpretative approaches, from virtuosistic or contemporary playing to more strictly philological reconstruction. And yet, the more I work with this instrument, the more I realize that I'm still at the beginning. What this process has shown me is not that we know how the lyre was played. On the contrary, it has shown me how much remains uncertain and how productive that uncertainty can be. Texts, images, and physical practice do not line up neatly. But when a passage of Quintilian, a vase painting analyzed by Voutyra, a lexical precision of Rocconi, and the gesture felt in the hands began to point in the same direction, something important happens. Not a proof, but a possibility emerges. And what I have presented today should therefore not be taken as a final answer, but as a set of plausible hypotheses grounded in iconography, ancient texts, and practical experimentation. Some solutions seem more convincing than others, especially when they make musical sense or ergonomic sense, but many details remain open. And this openness, it is what makes the study and practice of ancient music alive. For me, playing the lyre is not about reconstructing a fixed past, but about entering into a dialogue, listening, testing, and learning from the instrument itself. And it is in that dialogue that the lyre continues to speak. Here at Oxford, cradle of Barker and West, this conversation carries on. Thank you very much.